Does Supermassive have what it takes? Developing Little Nightmares 3 was already a big challenge, as the series has set a high watermark with two of the best atmospheric platformers with a near cult-like following thanks to over 20 million in sales for the series, but the challenge has exponentially increased with a pivot to a new developer away from Tarsier Studios. The good news is that Little Nightmares 3 is still very much Little Nightmares, as the look and feel hasn't been lost, which is reassuring for those looking for more of what they love. Unfortunately, that's also the bad news, as Little Nightmares 3 feels overly familiar. However, there is a silver lining. Supermassive have crafted a seemingly unconnected yet equally engaging narrative with a few fresh gameplay ideas that, although they don't fully embrace, they do provide glimpses of greatness within Little Nightmares 3. It might not move the series forward, but it is another great entry in the series. Before jumping into the video, I just want to take a quick second to say thank you. I understand that life is busy and that time is valuable. I appreciate you being here, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the video. Quick word of caution, there will be some spoilers regarding abilities that you'll find later in the game. If you weren't aware of the change of developers, you likely wouldn't notice any differences when playing Little Nightmares 3. Back in 2019, Tarsier Studios, developers of Little Nightmares and Little Nightmares 2, were acquired by the Embracer Group. However, Bandai Namco published the first two games and retained the IP, which is why the remainder of the Tarsier Studios are making Reanimal, and many former Tarsier devs left to start their own studio, Section 9 Interactive, to make End of Abyss. This is precisely why Supermassive, who are best known for Until Dawn, are continuing the franchise with Little Nightmares 3. In Little Nightmares 3, you follow the journey of Lo, a young boy, and his best friend Alone as they are trying to escape the spiral and find their way out of nowhere. The story is one of the strengths of Little Nightmares 3, as it feels like an attempt to tackle mental health, the downward spiral that you can find yourself on, and how at rock bottom, you will feel isolated or low and alone. Over the course of your journey, Low and Alone will explore areas that feel like allegories of the root causes of mental health, from an overabundance of screens to filling emptiness with cheap thrills. For the first time in the series, Little Nightmares 3 is offering the potential to be played in co-op. While having co-op is a nice option, it's only available online and on the same platform. However, it does include the Friends Pass that we're all familiar with at this point in the genre. But the huge disappointment is that Little Nightmares 3 doesn't offer local co-op, which is where co-op games thrive. Co-op aside, just like the first two numbered entries, the experience can still be enjoyed solo. Just like Little Nightmares 2, your companion will be AI, except in Little Nightmares 3, it feels greatly improved. Companions won't get in your way nearly as much, and they don't spoil the solutions to the puzzles, with the exception of a few rare occurrences that remove the satisfaction that puzzle platformers rely on. One of the new and unique ideas for Little Nightmares 3 is a greater focus on equipment. Lo and Alone both begin their journey with tools that they will carry with them for the whole experience. Lo is equipped with a bow and Alone with a wrench. The bow can be used for shooting ropes or hard-to-reach buttons, and the wrench can be used for smashing through weak walls, glass, or turning mechanisms. Both of these tools can also be used for self-defense at times from bosses and enemies. Lo and Alone will also find new equipment while exploring Nowhere. The first one that they encounter will be the umbrella, which allows them to ride wind currents to higher places that would typically be out of reach or glide down safely from platforms that would normally be fatal. You will eventually discover a flashlight, just like Little Nightmares 2, which highlights these stunning lighting effects but actually feels like a step backwards from how it operated in the second game without the ability to freeze enemies. However, the most impressive gameplay mechanic came later in the game that provided an ability that allowed you to see two different time periods at once, almost like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. All of these mechanics and equipment will be used sparingly, but for the most part, you will be doing things that are extremely familiar for series veterans. Climbing very tall ladders, crouch walking behind scary enemies, creeping through vents, reactivating elevators, jumping at the same time, walking across thin beams, and everything else that you remember from the first two games. These are still tense moments thanks to an unnerving and ominous score paired with great audio effects. They just lack the same impact that they once had. The biggest issue with Little Nightmares 3 is that it feels overly familiar. Supermassive brings some excellent ideas to the franchise with Little Nightmares 3, but fails to truly embrace them and instead relies on series staples. Lo and Alone both have unique tools, including the wrench and the bow, but few of the puzzles require them, let alone embrace the idea of requiring them both simultaneously, which would have offered a very interesting challenge. The umbrella provided a level of verticality unfamiliar to the series, but it was only utilized for a very small portion early on. Easily the best part of Little Nightmares 3 was finding the ability that gave the characters the power to see 2 different time periods at once, but just like the umbrella, it was underutilized with only a few puzzles in the final chapter. Combining the umbrella, the wrench, the bow, and the vision ability could have led to some incredible set pieces or puzzles. Spatial awareness and depth perception continue to be an issue with some puzzles as it has been for the series, and the areas of Little Nightmares 3 that provided the most frustration were due to this as well. Little Nightmares 3 wasn't as dark and disturbing as previous entries. The series could have created a numbness to the nature of it within the first 2 games, but it's likely due to the change of developers. When looking at their previous work, including Until Dawn and The Dark Pictures, the studio excels at tension and thrills as opposed to darkness and horror. Little Nightmares 3 is a very good game that captures what made the series great with an unsettling world, bite-sized puzzles, and great pacing, but it's mostly an experience that you've already had before. However, the market is starved for really good to great atmospheric platformers, and Little Nightmares 3 fills the void. The story is original and engaging, the companion AI is greatly improved, the visual palette has expanded slightly, and the gameplay shows aspirations of greatness. Little Nightmares 3 isn't as distinct as you would want from a third entry in the series, but considering the changes behind the scenes, it doesn't seem to miss a beat and is another must-play for fans of dark platformers. Most importantly, the glimpses of originality and greatness within prove that the series is in good hands moving forward. Once again, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, subscribe. If you want to help, leave a comment or a like, as that will help with the algorithm the most. That's it for this video, and until next time, be good to your fellow gamer, but more importantly, be better to your fellow human.